other thing that everyone is grappling with is that the government has its own language for everything. And they can express things, I don't want to say it's opaque, but it requires a fair amount of savvy to be able to translate it into actionable items that normal people can understand. Do you help out in that area too and lend some visibility?
Yeah. So one of the things we do is we also provide high-level consulting services. One of the services we provide is, I call it an insurance policy. So you buy a service where we are monitoring, let's say, the meaningful use regulations. And there have been changes, minor changes to those that have some big ramifications of what people need to do to be able to meet these new requirements. So we've got people that actually track that, and as part of that process, what we do is we do an evaluation of their infrastructure, so we know what they look like. So as these changes take place, we can actually go into each one of our members and say, because of the way your IT portfolio exists, this is going to be the impact to you from this change to the current regulation. And as you might imagine, that's very valuable to have for a lot of these people.
I would think. Well, like any journey, you have to know where you're starting. It's, how do you create a plan with only an endpoint?
Well, you need to know where the path is, too. It'd be really nice to know.
It actually starts to sound a bit scary because there are penalties attached to some of these things where, as you said, if you get the coding wrong, not only don't you get paid, but you could end up in jail, so to speak, or with a big fine. And if you don't understand these regs and you start making commitments to things that you can't fulfill, you may suffer penalties in that area as well.
And the other thing we try to do is, as we're looking at these markets, as you might imagine, the vendors who may have been the dominant vendors 5 or 6 years ago may not be the dominant vendors 5 or 6 years from now.
Not if history is any teacher of this.
Right. So what we're trying to figure out is who's roadkill, who's the new model, and trying to figure this out so that we protect
superhighway, cyberhighway.
Exactly. So we can figure out, and help our members understand as they start to make these tremendous investments where they probably should make those and have a little less risk. So at least we can point out the risk factors. They ultimately have to make that decision because they live with it. But we'd like to provide some insight so that we can help them be successful.
And we're independent analysts, so we're not associated with any of the vendors.
No axe to grind.
No axe to grind. We're gonna go do work with the vendors. We're going to understand what it is they're doing. We'll do briefings like we've done in the past as industry analysts. And we will write about them, and we will compare them to their peer organizations, and we'll say, these are the strengths, these are the weaknesses, this is the stuff that you need to be watching out for. If you already have them, then here's some things that you need to be talking to them about, and that sort of thing. So we try to be a trusted advisor to the CIO, that they know that we're going to give them the straight story.
Well, not to torture the Formula One car analogy, but it sounds like you guys scrape the black paint off the windshield so they can actually see where they're going as well. So, with this view now, what do you see as the most pressing and urgent decision points that they're sort of approaching at this very high rate of speed that are going to be driving the business and things they should be actually, if not losing sleep about, at least fixing?
Well, before we answer that, Mike and I are known for disagreeing with each other.
Okay, so that's good.
When we were at Gardner, we disagreed with each other in public, and we'll probably disagree with each other here, so that's okay.
I think that's actually a healthy thing.
Yes, it is. We think it is, too. So what's your opinion?
I think the challenge for most of these environments is trying to understand, where are they? Some hospitals are very advanced. So they can really, they know that they're in pretty good shape for meaningful use, but they need to now start concentrating on ICD-10. And oh, by the way, while the jet's going down the runway and they're trying to change the tires, then they want to come around and figure out how do we start to extend what we do beyond the walls of the hospitals and the clinics, because that's traditionally where we've been focused. Now we're going into post-acute care environments. Right. So how do we extend our current environments into post-acute care, or what kind of technologies or applications do we have to actually acquire and implement to be able to fulfill this new model of care delivery? So it really depends on each organization, where they are, what are their strategies, and what their portfolios look like. So there's no silver bullet answer here.
Yeah, and certainly not even one, much less not a silver bullet, and not even one bullet. It's
right.
There's lots of bullets.
Lots of bullets. So Dave, what's your take on this? I'm hoping that you don't agree.
Well, I do agree that each healthcare organization is in a different spot. I mean, And it all depends on what kind of an organization you are. Are you an academic medical center? Are you a part of an integrated delivery system? Are you a community hospital? Are you a critical access hospital? Whatever. I would argue that you have to pay attention to what the business drivers are hitting in your particular geography and the region that you're in. You've got to pay attention to that, because there are going to be some geographies that are going to move to an accountable care environment faster than others. For example, in Massachusetts, they're already moving as quickly as they can move to become accountable care organizations, and they're changing the way healthcare is delivered and financed and everything else, because they're a little more advanced than most of the other states.
In a sense, it's a cultural issue that overlays the...
Correct. So you've got to pay attention to that. So that one's going to be in the back of your mind. Okay, how do I put the IT infrastructure in place that does what Mike said, which is go beyond the walls of the hospital and the clinics you're associated with to entities that you don't own. So nursing homes, SNFs, whatever. You have to have a payer component. So how do you get the information that you need to be able to manage in that kind of an environment? So some places it's going to be an issue. I think ICD-10 is huge. I think if they don't get put enough resources on ICD-10, some of this stuff isn't going to matter, because the AR days are going to skyrocket because of the productivity of the coders. And for example, when Canada went from ICD-9 to ICD-10, it took them 4 years. And the coders, in a study that we've read, said that the coders lost 50% productivity and didn't get that 50% back after the first year. So the coders are dramatically less productive, because this is a major difference. We have far more codes than the Canadians, far more codes.
So 50% looks optimistic.
Yes, it does. And what's different still is that the Canadians don't use ICD-10 for billing. We do, right? So I think if healthcare organizations don't pay attention to the ICD-10 thing and start putting some resources on it, ACOs aren't really going to matter much, because somebody's going to buy you because you're going to be in some deep financial
with a big
woes.
AR queue.
Correct.